There we go.
All right.
Okay. So with the new House Bill 33, social service professionals are required to report suspected animal abuse to law enforcement officers or humane agents. So we have Jana Cassidy, who's the executive director of the Humane Society of Delaware County, to explain that process to us. Thank you, Jana.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So this is a pretty simple presentation that I've put together for social service agencies. It helps explain a little bit more about the requirements behind it. And then I was specifically asked to talk a little bit more about how a social service agency would go about, or a professional would look at an animal to be able to say, hey, I think we might have some of those badges of neglect or cruelty available to us, and then how we go about reporting those to individuals. So feel free to ask questions as we go along, or I will be more than willing to answer them, at the very end if you want to write them down. It's up to you. So let's talk a little bit about what animal abuse is. So one of the main reasons why I think that this bill is so important to agencies is we know that it has been proven time and time again that animal abuse is one of the largest indicators and predictors of domestic violence, and it's also about child maltreatment as well. And so if we identify animal abuse, there's the potential that we can stop the other two, or we can prevent it from even happening. So that's one of the biggest badges associated with our different disciplines working together. What we have found over years is that in domestic violence situations, the partner will threaten or even harm an animal to keep the other partner in that relationship and to keep him from leaving. We've had situations as well, not at our facility, but it's been reported in the past, that a partner will even make a child hurt an animal to keep a parent in a relationship. So, you get those kind of domination type of relationships going, and it can be very difficult to be able to move yourself away from those situations, whether it's children or animal. And then the big thing is that it's been proven time again that children who either witness this kind of violence or have to commit it based on the direction of an adult are also at high risk of becoming victims later on in their own life. So those are badges that are just absolutely, something we need to pay attention to. And then, of course, what you guys are really interested in, and the whole purpose we're here today, and that is elder abuse. We know that based on the way things are changing, that there's a lot of elders, seniors, that are living with their children, their grandchildren. And then those individuals now, because they have financial means, Social Security, they have income, can be at higher risk as well of being abused, and their animals could be held hostage as part of that. So this information I received it as a result of a really great company, if you guys aren't familiar with it, called National Link Coalition. And it is phenomenal resource. And it actually has looked state to state to state at the link between violence in people and violence in the animals. And it is amazing what is out there on this topic. But the end result of that is that 92% of APS caseworkers have found that animal neglect co-occurs most of the time with clients who are unable to care for themselves. And that makes sense, right? If you can't take care of your own basic needs, there's a good chance you're not going to be able to take care of your pets. So that happens. And then 45% also have seen intentional, which is scary, intentional abuse of animals or neglect. They intentionally do not want to do something to take care of this animals, or they have harmed it. So that is a very disturbing fact, to be quite honest. And then we also know, which is not surprising as well, animal hoarding happens, and it's a very, very difficult situation. And the ideal person to become an animal hoarder is an older woman, and they develop this intense attachment to animals, whether it's dogs or cats. And they believe that they are the only one who can help these animals and that no one else can. So animal hoarding is a sub-discipline all of its own within animal abuse and neglect. So some of these pictures are actual pictures from cases and animals that we have had here at the shelter. And so I put these in here for you so that it would help maybe be a trigger for you to remember some things. And I like to say, whenever you're trying to figure out whether you've got animal abuse and neglect, they kind of go hand in hand. The best tools are an individual's senses. And if you think about it, how does things smell? What are we seeing? What do we hear? What can we touch? And we'll talk about touch, because there's a lot of times we don't want to touch, right? And then when I'm talking about taste, I'm not talking about our taste, but I'm talking about a human's taste, or the animal's taste. And the taste has to do with food and what's available in the home. So I'll talk about those a little bit for you. This was a cage at a humane case that we went into. And if you look at this, the only thing there's bowls in there, right? But there's no food and there's no water in either one of them. And then there's paper in there. And if you look real closely at the paper, it's been chewed. So that kind of, again, if we're talking about taste, what's going on with that situation? So kitty litter box. This one is not one from me, but boy, it sure does serve the purpose. I like to start with smell. And so what I would like to say is, as you approach a resident, one of your clients, as you enter the home, which is the same thing that happens with humane agents, if you have the opportunity, take a deep breath, close your eyes, and take a really good deep breath, right? And when you do that, what do you smell? What is the first smell that you smell? When we enter a lot of hoarding homes, when we enter a lot of neglect homes, the first thing that we smell is the overwhelming smell of cat urine or the overwhelming smell of feces. So those are things that automatically, as you're approaching the house, especially if there's a lot of outdoor cats, you start smelling those things before you enter. You know that there's a good chance it's not going to get better once you enter the home. So smell. How does it smell? Sometimes, depending on what's going on, once you enter that home, you're going to smell decay. You're going to smell a dead animal. You're going to smell an animal that is wounded. You know, you're going to smell rotting flesh. You're going to smell those horrible smells. We've all known what they smell like. And it's not pleasant, to say the least. And then dirty and wet animals. We get animals in that come in from the puppy mill situation. They're breeder animals, and they're done with them. And when they get delivered to us, they have lived in their filth for so long that they smell absolutely horrendous. You know, part of our building will stink for days. And even when we give them baths and we shampoo them 3, 4, 5 times, it is like it's embedded in their skin. And as much as we try to get it out, it just takes, you know, shaving them and getting rid of the matting and getting down to skin to where you can really start making a difference with their smell. So we don't have smell-o-vision, so be thankful for that, because I could share some smells that would make you not want to eat for a couple days. But smell is number one, without a doubt. Sight. We rely on our sight so much. Sight is by far one of our biggest things that we go to. And so sight has a lot to do with what we're looking at. So the dog down in the bottom left-hand corner had a flea dermatitis. And if you look at that poor little dog, from basically the neck backwards, there's hardly any fur on this dog. And it was because there were so many fleas on this animal that it lost all its fur. So what I'd like to say is just look around and see what you're seeing. You know, sometimes, like it was said earlier, the owners physically abuse their dog or their cat. A caretaker who lives with them may be abusing the animal, and a child. We have had situations where a child has injured cats before. So those are things to, you know, are you seeing them actually do something to the animal? Do they tell you? You know, and we're talking about hearing here in a minute, but sometimes they actually confess. I hit the animal all the time. Does the animal show fear? So sometimes animals come into us, and because of their background, if we try to you know, reach down and pet them, they just spontaneously urinate on themselves or on the floor. Again, it's a fear behavior. Do they try to run away so they don't want to be touched? Or do they cower in a corner? Or they drop to the ground? You know, it's trying to minimize their space. And so those are extremes, but we do see that sometimes. And sometimes they don't do it to one person in the family, but they will to others in the household. And those are really good indicators of maybe, you know, looking a little deeper. Extremely thin or extremely fat. And surprisingly, you know, just as we're seeing obesity issues with adult populations and children populations, we're seeing it in children or in animals too. So sometimes, you know, it's not that they're starving to death. Sometimes they're so heavy that they can barely move. So keep that in mind as well. And then sometimes you just see things. It's, you know, an animal that can't get up. It's limping. It has a leg lifted up and it will not use that leg at all. And so these are obviously things you want to see. What if it's, you know, got a wound to an eye, and so it's got a, you know, bulging eye, or one that's closed shut and it's poopy. Those kind of things happen. And then the embedded collars in open wounds. We see this a lot more than what I would like to say, but animals do get injured, accidents do happen, but there should be rational explanations for why an animal has an injury, and they should be able to talk to you about why that happened and what they're doing to care for it, right? So healed wounds obviously are another thing. You see a lot of healed wounds, or multiple animals have open wounds or healed wounds. Sometimes it's just one. Sometimes everybody is in love with all the other animals to the detriment of one, and that one really takes the brunt of the family's anger or abuse. And then, like with this picture of little Peanut here, loss of hair. They can have really bad, you know, dandruffy skin. They can have rashes. They can have bumps. And then matted fur. We see matted fur a lot more than what anybody ever wants to see, because they don't go to groomers and they don't get brushed on a regular basis. They have long nails that are so long it's just unbelievable. Sometimes they even are confused. You know, if you're thinking about normal behavior of an animal, whether it's a cat or dog, does it act right? Not doing right? How does it act? Is it confused? Does it seem like it is wobbly, can't stand well? I talked about eyes and ear and nose, and sometimes it's other areas too. Sometimes there's, you know, a mass that is oozing. These are gross things, aren't they? And then flea and ticks and other parasites. We're seeing a lot of tick-borne disease, and we're seeing a lot of animals, especially in the southern part of Ohio, that are coming up, and they are covered in ticks this year. And then, of course, fleas. You know, that's just an ongoing thing that you're always going to have to be diligent with. And I'm sure from a social side, you guys see this even more so than we do when you go into a home and you're concerned about how much flea dermatitis there is in that home, and that you're going to leave carrying those fleas out with you. So fleas, they literally can suck the blood out of an animal to the point where it makes it anemic if there's that much of a load and infestation. So keep that in mind as well. So this is Nala. She came into us not too long ago, and just taking a first blush look at her, she came into us. She was part of a humane case. She was being kept in a cage, and that's where she lived most of her life. Her day was spent in a cage, and it wasn't a large cage, but it was large enough for her to be in, but she wasn't able to show normal behavior. If you look real closely, her nails are way too long, and you can see through the fur, you can kind of see those outlines of the rib cage, the pelvic bone sticking up. She was slowly being starved to death is what it amounted to. So hearing, what do you hear when you're there? Animal noise is number one. What is the normal behavior you would expect to hear from an animal, and what is not normal? Animals will whine because they want up on their owners. They want their attention. They want something. Sometimes they will cry, they bark, they meow. But one of the ones that I think that is really important is, are you seeing or are you hearing an animal licking? Because a lot of times animals lick because something hurts. And so where is that noise coming from? Is it at the back of the house? Is it at the front of the house? Is there an animal that you're hearing but you don't see? What is going on with that animal? And then that can lead to discussions. Oh, do I hear a dog barking? Do you have a dog? Oh, whose dog is it? That kind of thing. What we find is that sometimes clients' impression of the animal or the family's impression of the animal drives behavior and how it's treated in the household. Sometimes they will, again, kind of confess to things. It's like, yeah, that's not my dog, it's my son's dog. He left it here. He left a long time ago. I hate that dog. I don't like that dog. He's not mine. He's an annoyance. I wish someone would take him away. Those are the kind of things that you want to listen for, because that basically tells you this is an animal that is not wanted. So definitely look at that. And then veterinary care. If an animal looks bad and you see an animal that does not look good, it can be part of a conversation just to say, well, I see that Fluffy here, is really skinny. Have you had her to the vet recently to see what's going on? Just to get an understanding. Sometimes you've got an elderly animal that just won't eat, or they can't keep food down. There can be very rational reasons for why an animal looks the way it does. But again, it's trying to get to that next layer and peel that onion back a little bit. Overcrowded conditions, whether it's humans or animals. If the dwelling is set up to really house 2-3 people comfortable, how many are really there? And then how many animals are really there? And how many of the animals are living in the house? Are there animals that are living outside? Are they in an appropriate size crate or cage for the animal to express normal behavior? Is it in that crate or cage all day? Does it get outside, and do they leave it outside for long periods of time, especially when we have weather? Most of our humane cases are driven by weather extremes. Days like today when it's 90 plus and 100% humidity, compared to negative 10, 20 degrees and snow flying. So where is that animal at? And while it's in that situation, it is required to have access to food, water, and shelter. So that's what the law says: food, water, shelter. So does it have access to those? Or just by looking at it, does it look like that animal is getting food, water on a regular basis? So just so you know, Nola was adopted by an extended friend of the family, and she looks phenomenal. She's gone from about 40 pounds to almost 80, so she's about double her weight. And she gets to go kayaking on the river with her owners now, and she has a sibling that she just dearly loves, another female lab. So good success story there. So both of these are animals from our shelter. So the one at the top is a little dog that came in. His name was Frosty. Frosty literally came in wrapped up in a blanket. Someone found him on the side of the road and brought him to us. At least that's the story. And we couldn't believe that he was even still alive. If you look at that animal, it makes you wonder what in the world happened. And so one of the things that I like to talk about here is the touch. And in touch, what I'm talking about is what is the interaction of the human and the animal in this situation? Is it, being held on the lap and being loved on? Again, are people trying to shoo it away? How do they treat that animal in their environment? How do other members treat that animal in that household as well? Is it trying to get affection? Is it trying to get attention? Or is it cowering in the corner? And keep in mind, sometimes species will drive some of this. Cats don't always come up and ask for attention. Sometimes they do. It depends on the individual animal. I've got a dog at home that really doesn't want to interact with humans that well. She loves us, but not really everybody else. So again, what is that normal behavior for that animal? And then general health. And in animal welfare, there's a body condition score, BCS, and what it is, typically there's a couple scales. The one we use is 1 to 5. And it basically says 1 is starving and 5 is terribly obese. And then the other one is a 1 to 9. The bottom line is that somewhere in the middle, if it's between, like a 3 to a 5 in that area, is generally considered to be a healthy body condition score, and it looks good health-wise. If it gets down into the 2s and 1s, if it gets into the 8s or 9s or 5s, those are ones that you really wanted to start thinking about. How does that play into what I'm seeing? The other thing is with this dog, Frosty, if you would had the opportunity to touch him when he came in, he felt to the touch unhealthy. It's what he looks like, but he felt that way. His fur was filthy. It was coarse. It was, you could feel the bones. So everything about him just felt unhealthy when you touch him. And then taste. And when I'm talking about taste, again, I'm talking about from an animal's perspective. So these are 2 pictures from a case we went in on. And this case, we had an animal that died from starvation. We had another one that was real darn close, and we were able to bring it back to health. And then we removed 5 puppies and a cat from this household. So in total, we removed 8 animals from this household. And the picture at the front I showed you had the cage with the 2 bowls that didn't have anything in it. But when we looked in the cabinets, we found cases, if you see that, the cases of canned food, and we found cat food and dog food. Nothing had been opened. So no one took the time or the effort to feed the animals, even though they had food sitting there to do it. So to me, if you've got food and you intentionally don't feed your animals to the point that one dies, that's neglect. And not only is it neglect, but it's intentional. So that's what I would like to say is, what do you see? Do you see food and water out? Do you see bowls, but you don't see food? Do you see cans? Do you see bags of food that are open? Do you see them, but they've never been touched? So, it's either what is there and is it being used, or what is missing from the environment. And then fleas and parasites. We've already talked about how horrible sometimes these houses are with the fleas. And just dirty. Sometimes we've had situations where you're afraid to walk on the floor between the fleas and the parasites and the cockroaches, and then you add to it, you've got feces and urine all over the place. It's filthy. And if you think that that smell is horrible for us as humans, dogs and cats have sense of smell that is a lot better than ours. And that's where they live. They're living that much closer to that floor where those smells are. So is that not neglect when an animal has to live in that kind of environment because it can't get away from it? And then, like I said, the small kennel or crate. So again, options there for looking at what you're seeing. This is the top part of this is just a cutout from the Humane Society of Delaware County's website. And at the very top on the right hand side, there's a little black ribbon there and it says report animal cruelty. So reporting it is as simple as going to our website, clicking on that little black box up there, and it will take you to a complaint form. So within that, pictures and videos, if you're able to get those, help us. Don't go out of your way, but if you have the opportunity to snap a couple pictures, it really does make a difference for us as humane agents. And then just sharing some stats with you. In 2020, we had 97 complaints registered to us. Of those, the number one animal was dogs. The number two were horses, again, extremes in weather condition. And it doesn't surprise me being that we're Delaware County. And then cats were number three. The biggest thing that I like to make sure everybody understands is that you cannot be anonymous. So you have to give us contact information. You have to give us names. And so for cross-reporting, that I know is not an issue, but it can be for that neighbor who doesn't want anybody to know that they've made a complaint. We have to have a basis for a complaint, and the basis has to be a person or an individual we can get in touch with. So our website is hsdcohio.org. It's pretty simple to get to us, and so that's the way you can get in touch with us. And so just click on that, and that'll take you right to it. So with that, I wanted to share something that is going to be coming up in September, because if you guys are looking at opportunities to get additional training, this is an awesome one. Ohio Animal Advocates is a really good partner agency to the Humane Societies, and they are putting on a free virtual training on Tuesday, September 21st. It is Better Together, Cross-Reporting for Humane and Human Services. For those of you who need to accrue continuing education, they are offering 5.75 hours of CE for social workers, counselors, and therapists. So you can get to their website. The link is down there, and just sign up for it. Vicki Dresner is the executive director of OAA, and we've done a lot of partnering on different issues, and this is definitely going to be a really good opportunity to sit in and learn a lot more about all of the different avenues that go on with animals and humans and how they cross paths. So with that, I am done, and I am more than happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
I have a question.
Did you want to shut off, Leah?
I did want to ask before that, can you explain what the follow-up process is when we make a report? What happens to the animals and then what happens to the people?
Absolutely. So within 24 hours of receiving a complaint, one of my humane agents, there's two of them, they work as needed on call. They're not 24/7. And they just work as we need them. And so they will get those complaints that go directly to their inbox. And then they will do their research. They'll do some follow-up phone calls with the individual if they need to get a little bit more information about that. And then from there, they will actually investigate that individual's complaint with the address, the owner, the harbor, or the animal, and see what's going on with that. And then once that is concluded, they will report back 100% of the time. They will give you a call back, an email, something that helps give you resolution as to where they're at with that case and what they're doing with it.
So when you say that it can't be confidential, that doesn't mean that if I call in and make a complaint, you guys go out and investigate. Your investigators aren't telling them that Tracy made a complaint, correct?
That is correct. What we have been instructed by legal counsel is that from the time a complaint is lodged until that is finalized, it is considered an ongoing investigation, and we do not have to release any information regarding that case to anyone. At the conclusion of that case, when it is closed, at that point, it is considered a public record and it is subject to public information request. So an individual or the person who's being investigated can come back at that point with a public records request and ask for information from that case. At that point, we do not have the ability to redact information other than, the personal confidential information at that point.
So I have a question. Did Frosty make it?
Absolutely. I meant to put a picture in here of Frosty. The owner brought Frosty in to visit with us, and he's almost fat. He had a beautiful white coat instead of that grungy yellow look. Just a sweet dog, and oh my goodness, it's like night and day. You would not believe the difference that it made in that dog.
Well, thanks for the update. That's happy news. A lot of this is really hard to hear, but I'm glad that you were able to give us a lot of information, because it's certainly things that we need to know in a lot of situations that we're seeing with our clients. So unless anybody else has any pertinent questions for right now before we continue, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Jana.